Lisa Harper stepped off the transport ship and onto the landing pad of Colony 7. The metal under her boots felt cold, even through her thick military boots. She had been away for 6 months on a mission to the Outer Rim, and she was excited to see her brother Danny again. He had moved to Colony 7 2 years ago with his wife Kate and their twin girls, Amy and Beth. They were building a new life on the frontier, far from the crowded cities of Earth. But something was wrong. The air smelled of smoke and burned metal. There should have been hundreds of colonists moving around the landing area, but she saw only a few scattered figures in the distance. The buildings that should have been bright and welcoming looked dark and broken. Lisa walked toward the main settlement, her heart beating faster with each step. She passed a destroyed transport vehicle, its metal twisted into strange shapes. The windows of nearby buildings were shattered, and black marks covered the walls. She started to run. The colony's main street was empty, except for debris scattered everywhere. Shop fronts were blown open, their contents spilled onto the ground. A child's toy sat in the middle of the road, covered in dust and ash. Lisa picked it up with shaking hands. It was a small stuffed animal. It's the kind that Amy and Beth loved to collect. She dropped the toy and ran toward the residential area where Danny lived. The houses there were in worse condition than the shops. Some were completely destroyed, reduced to piles of rubble and twisted metal. Others stood partially intact, but their walls were blackened and their roofs had collapsed. Danny's house was gone. Where it once stood, there was only a crater filled with ash and broken concrete. Lisa fell to her knees at the edge of the crater, staring at the place where her brother and his family had lived. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. From her throat, an old man approached her from behind. His clothes were torn and dirty, and his face was covered with cuts and bruises. "You looking for the Harpers?" he asked in a quiet voice. Lisa nodded, unable to speak. "They didn't make it," the old man said. "None of them in this section made it. The aliens came 3 days ago. Big ships, silver and black. They didn't give any warning, just started shooting." "Who were they?" Lisa finally managed to ask. "Called themselves the Zephyrian Empire. Said this was their territory now. Anyone who didn't leave would be killed." The old man looked down at the crater. "Most folks tried to run, but their ships were too fast. They hunted down everyone they could find." Lisa stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but anger was starting to replace the shock. How many survived? Maybe 200 out of 3,000. They left us alive to tell others what happens when humans try to settle in Zephyrian space. The old man spit on the ground. They said this was a lesson. Lisa spent the next 2 days helping the survivors. She used her military training to organize medical care for the wounded and set up temporary shelters. But at night, when the work was done, she would walk through the ruins and think about Danny. She remembered his laugh and the way he would tease her about being too serious all the time. She thought about Kate, who made the best apple pie Lisa had ever tasted. She thought about the twins, who were only 8 years old and had their whole lives ahead of them. On the 3rd day, a ship arrived from Earth Command. General William Knox stepped out, followed by a team of investigators and reporters. Lisa had served under Knox before, and she respected him as a fair and honest leader. But when she saw the look on his face, she knew what he was going to say. "This is a tragedy," Knox announced to the gathered survivors and reporters, "but we must respond carefully. The Zephyrian Empire has technology far beyond ours. Our ships can move faster than anything we have, and their weapons can destroy our largest battleships in minutes. We cannot risk a war that we cannot win." One of the reporters asked, "What about justice for the colonists who died here?" Knox looked uncomfortable. "We will file formal protests with the Galactic Council. We will impose economic sanctions. We'll make it clear that such actions are unacceptable. If they do it again," the reporter pressed, "we will take appropriate defensive measures to protect our remaining colonies." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had heard this kind of talk before in briefings about conflicts with alien races. It was the language of politicians and bureaucrats. People who made decisions from safe offices laters away from the consequences. That evening, she requested a private meeting with General Knox. They met in the temporary command center that had been set up in one of the few intact buildings. "Lisa, I know this is personal for you," Knox said before she could speak, I know your brother lived here. You have to understand the bigger picture. The Zephyrians have conquered dozens of worlds. Their empire spans half the galaxy. We fight them directly. They will destroy every human colony and probably attack Earth itself. So we do nothing? Lisa asked.
No.
We do what we can through diplomatic channels. We strengthen our defenses. We make sure this doesn't happen again. You mean we accept it? Knox was quiet for a long moment. Sometimes accepting reality is the most responsible thing a leader can do. Lisa stood up. I need to think about this, sir. That night, she walked through the ruins one more time. She stopped at the crater where Danny's house had been and knelt. Down, in the moonlight, she could see small objects scattered in the ash. A piece of Kate's favorite cup. A bent picture frame that had held a photo of the whole family. A small shoe that had belonged to one of the twins. She picked up the shoe and held it in her hands. It was pink with white flowers, the kind of thing that Amy would have chosen. Lisa remembered buying shoes just like this for Amy's birthday 6 months ago. She had been so proud to be the fun aunt who brought presents and told stories about life in the military. Lisa made her decision that night, kneeling in the ashes of her family's home. General Knox was right about one thing. A direct military response would be suicide. The Zephyrians were too strong, too advanced, too well established. But he was wrong about something else. There were other ways to fight. She had spent 12 years in military intelligence, learning how to gather information and strike at enemies from the shadows. She knew how to disappear, how to move without being detected, how to find weaknesses that others missed. The Zephyrians thought humans were weak because they had only seen human politicians and diplomats. They had never met a human who had nothing left to lose. The next morning, she submitted her resignation from Earth Command. General Knox tried to talk her out of it, but her mind was made up. She booked passage on a freight ship heading to the frontier worlds. Using credits she had saved over years of military service, as the ship prepared to leave orbit, she took one last look at Colony 7 through the viewport. The ruins looked small and insignificant from space, just another failed settlement on a forgotten world.
Oh.
But Lisa would never forget. She would carry the memory of this place and these people with her wherever she went. The Zephyrian Empire had made a mistake when they decided to make an example of Colony 7. They had killed her family thinking it would make humans afraid. Instead, they had created something much more dangerous, a human being with nothing left to lose and all the skills needed to make them pay for what they had done. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying Lisa Harper away from everything she had ever known and toward a war that only she knew was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Lisa Harper disappeared from official records. The freight ship had dropped her off at Station Omega, a rundown trading post on the edge of human space. It was the kind of place where people came to disappear, where credits bought silence, and no one asked to. Any questions about the past? Lisa had changed since Colony 7. Her military uniform was gone, replaced by the rough clothes of a frontier trader. Her hair was shorter and dyed black instead of its natural brown. She had scars on her hands from learning to work with tools and machinery, skills she had never needed as an intelligence officer. But her eyes remained the same, cold and focused, like a hunter watching prey. She spent her days in the station's lower levels, in bars and shops where information was traded like any other commodity. She bought drinks for discharged soldiers who had fought against the Zephyrians in border skirmishes. She listened to merchants complain about Zephyrian trade restrictions and unfair taxation. She talked to smugglers who had run goods through Zephyrian space and lived to tell about it slowly. Piece by piece, she built a picture of her enemy. The Zephyrian Empire was old, older than human civilization. It had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years, and they were very good at it. Their technology was advanced beyond anything humans had developed. Their ships could travel between stars faster than human vessels. Their weapons could destroy entire cities in minutes. But Lisa learned something else about the Zephyrians, something that gave her hope. They were predictable. After 1,000 years of easy victories, they had become comfortable with their methods. They followed the same patterns in every conquest, used the same tactics in every battle. They expected their enemies to fight back. In conventional ways, with fleets and armies and formal declarations of war, Lisa also learned about their society. The Zephyrians valued order and hierarchy above all else. Every member of their military had a specific rank and role, and they rarely acted outside their assigned duties. They communicated through a complex network of relay stations that coordinated their activities across dozens of star systems. Most importantly, they looked down on species they considered primitive, barely noticing the servants and workers who maintained their facilities. One evening, while sitting in a dimly lit bar on the station's 5th level, Lisa met Captain Jake Morrison. He was a smuggler who ran goods between the frontier worlds and the inner systems. His ship was small and fast, perfect for avoiding the patrol routes that larger vessels had to follow. Jake was drunk and talking too loudly about a recent job that had gone wrong. "The Zephyrians nearly caught me near Proxima Station," he said to anyone who would listen. "Had to dump half my cargo to outrun their patrol ships." Lisa bought him another drink and sat down beside him. "Well, tell me about Proxima Station," she said. Jake looked at her suspiciously. "Why do you want to know?" "I'm looking for work. Heard they might need maintenance techs." Jake laughed. "The Zephyrians don't hire humans for real jobs. You'd be lucky to get work scrubbing floors." He took a long drink from his glass. "But if you're serious, I know someone who supplies their mining operation there. A guy named Peter Walsh. He might need someone to help with deliveries." Lisa nodded and bought Jake another drink. "What kind of mining operation?" "Quantum crystals. The Zephyrians use them for their communication systems and ship engines. Big facility, heavily guarded. They process crystals from 3 different systems and ship them all over the Empire." This was exactly the kind of information Lisa had been looking for. She spent the next hour listening to Jake describe the station's layout, security procedures, and shipping schedules. By the time he passed out at the table, she had learned everything she needed to know. The next day, Lisa found Peter Walsh at his small office near the station's docking bays. He was a thin, nervous man who looked like he had not slept well in years. His business involved buying supplies from human traders and selling them to Zephyrian facilities at a significant markup. "I need someone to help with deliveries," Peter told her. "Someone who can keep their mouth shut and follow instructions. The Zephyrians don't like surprises, and they don't tolerate mistakes." Lisa nodded. "I can do that. You worked with aliens before?" "Some. I know how to stay out of the way and do my job." Peter studied her for a moment. "You're not like the usual people who come looking for this kind of work. Most of them are desperate or running from something. You seem different. Everyone's running from something," Lisa said. "The question is whether they're running toward something better." Peter hired her that afternoon. Her first delivery was scheduled for the following week, a shipment of replacement parts for mining equipment at Proxima Station. It was exactly the opportunity she had been waiting for. Lisa spent the days before the delivery studying everything she could find about Zephyrian technology. She read technical manuals that Peter had collected over years of dealing with alien equipment. She practiced speaking basic Zephyrian phrases, learning the formal greeting and response patterns that their society required. Most importantly, she studied the mining equipment itself. The quantum crystal processors were incredibly complex machines that required precise calibration to function properly. They were also connected to the station's main computer network, which controlled everything from life support to communication. Systems the delivery went smoothly. Lisa dressed as a maintenance worker and followed Peter through the station's service corridors. The Zephyrians barely looked at her, treating human workers as invisible as furniture. She made note of security checkpoints, guard rotations, and the location of critical systems. The mining facility was massive, extending deep into the asteroid where Proxima Station was built. Hundreds of quantum crystal processors worked continuously, their humming filling the air with a constant background noise. Lisa counted 27 processing units, each one capable of handling crystals from multiple mining operations. While Peter completed his business with the Zephyrian station manager, Lisa volunteered to help unload the equipment. This gave her access to the maintenance areas, where she could observe the processors up close. She memorized their control interfaces and noted the locations of access panels that would allow someone to modify their programming. On the trip back to station, Omega, Peter complimented her work. "You did well today. The Zephyrians didn't give us any trouble and we finished ahead of schedule. If you want regular work, I can use someone like you." Lisa accepted his offer. Over the next 2 months, she made 6 more deliveries to Zephyrian facilities. Each trip taught her more about their operations and security procedures. She learned which guards were lazy and which ones were thorough. She discovered that maintenance workers could move freely through most areas of the stations without being questioned. More importantly, she identified the weaknesses in their systems. The Zephyrians relied heavily on automated processes and computer networks to manage their facilities. Their technology was advanced, but it was also interconnected in ways that could be exploited by someone who understood how it worked. During her 8th delivery, Lisa made her move. While Peter was meeting with the station manager, she slipped away from the loading area and made her way to the mining facility's main computer terminal. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, writing a small program that would introduce subtle errors into the processor's calibration systems. The program was designed to work slowly, making tiny adjustments that would accumulate over time. To the Zephyrians, it would look like normal equipment wear, the kind of gradual degradation that happened to all machinery eventually. They would not realize what was happening until it was too late. Lisa installed the program and returned to the loading area just as Peter finished his business. They left Proxima Station without incident, and she acted as if nothing had happened. 3 weeks later, first reports began to circulate through the underground networks. Proxima Station had suffered a massive equipment failure that destroyed most of their quantum crystal processing capability. The explosion had been so severe that it damaged the station's communication relay. Cutting off contact with 7 star systems for over a week, Lisa listened to the news while sitting in the same bar where she had met Jake Morrison. The reports described the failure as an industrial accident, but she knew better. The Zephyrian Empire had just experienced its first taste of human ingenuity applied with malicious intent. She finished her drink and walked back to her small quarters on Station Omega. Tomorrow, she would start planning her next target. The Zephyrians had taught her an important lesson at Colony 7. Actions had consequences. Now it was time for them to learn that lesson themselves. The success at Proxima Station was just the beginning. Lisa Harper had tasted victory against the Zephyrian Empire, and she wanted more. But she knew that one attack would be dismissed as an accident. She needed to create a pattern that would make them understand they were being hunted. Her next target was a supply depot on Titan Base, a large asteroid station that served as a hub for Zephyrian military operations in the sector. The depot stored weapons, ammunition, and spare parts for their fleet. It was heavily guarded and had multiple layers of security. But Lisa had learned that the strongest fortresses often had the weakest
foundations.
She spent 3 weeks studying the depot's operations. Peter Walsh had a contract to deliver cleaning, supplies, and maintenance equipment to Titan Base every month. Lisa volunteered to help with the deliveries, giving her regular access to the station. She observed guard patterns, identified security cameras, and mapped out the facility's layout. The Zephyrians used automated systems to manage their inventory. Every item in the depot was tracked by computer, from the smallest bolt to the largest missile. The system was designed to be foolproof, but Lisa found its weakness in that very perfection. Because the computers tracked everything so precisely, they had no tolerance for irregularities. Lisa created a simple computer virus that would slowly corrupt the inventory database. The virus was designed to change random numbers in the system, making it appear that supplies were being used faster than they actually were. Over time, this would create chaos in the supply chain as the computers ordered more materials than needed. While also reporting shortages that did not exist, she planted the virus during a routine delivery, hiding it in the maintenance schedule. For the depot's cleaning robots, the virus spread through the system gradually, making tiny changes that were too small to notice individually, but would accumulate into major problems. 2 months later, the effects became visible. Titan base was drowning in surplus supplies while simultaneously running out of critical materials. Ships arrived to pick up ammunition that had been moved to make room for excess spare parts. Weapons sat in storage while the maintenance crews lacked the tools to install them. The base commander sent increasingly frantic messages to his superiors, reporting that his computers had gone insane. But Lisa was already working on her next target. She had learned about a communication relay on Vega Station that coordinated Zephyrian fleet movements across 12 star systems. The relay was small and lightly defended, but it was crucial to their operations. Without it, their ships would be unable to coordinate attacks or respond quickly to threats. The challenge was getting access to the relay. Unlike the mining stations and supply depots, the communication facility did not use human workers or contractors. It was staffed entirely by Zephyrian technicians who rarely left their posts. Lisa solved this problem by creating her own opportunity. She spent weeks studying the relay's power consumption patterns and discovered that it drew electricity from the station's main reactor through a series of underground cables. The cables ran through maintenance tunnels that were rarely inspected. She gained access to the tunnels by posing as a contractor hired to inspect the station's environmental systems. The work was legitimate, arranged through Peter Walsh's connections, but it gave her the cover she needed to move freely through the restricted areas. Lisa found the power cables exactly where she expected them. She installed a small device that would gradually increase the electrical resistance in the cables over time. The device was designed to look like normal corrosion, the kind of wear that happened to all electrical systems in space stations. The increased resistance would cause the power supply to fluctuate, creating brief interruptions in the relay's operation. These interruptions would be too short to trigger emergency procedures, but they would be long enough to scramble the delicate quantum signals that carried messages between star systems. The device activated 3 weeks later. Suddenly, Zephyrian commanders across the sector began reporting communication problems. Messages arrived garbled or incomplete. Fleet movements were delayed when ships received conflicting orders. Some vessels lost contact with their command centers entirely and had to operate independently. Admiral Kethmer, the Zephyrian officer responsible for the sector, was becoming increasingly frustrated. In 6 months, he had lost a major mining facility, seen his supply lines collapse into chaos, and watched his communication network fail. His superiors were demanding explanations that he could not provide. The admiral called a meeting of his senior staff to discuss the situation. "These cannot be coincidences," he told them. 3 major failures in 6 months, all affecting critical infrastructure. Someone is attacking us. His intelligence officer, Commander Zekska, disagreed. "The evidence suggests equipment failures, sir. Our technicians have found no signs of sabotage. The mining facility explosion was caused by processor overload. The supply depot problems stem from computer errors. The communication relay is suffering from power fluctuations. Then explain why all these failures are happening in the same sector," the admiral demanded. "Perhaps the equipment in this region is older than average," suggested his chief engineer. "Or maybe the local conditions are causing accelerated wear." Admiral Kethmer was not convinced, but he had no proof of enemy action. The Zephyrian Empire had detailed records of every known human military unit, and none of them were operating in this sector. The few human colonies in the area were small and peaceful, with no capability for military action. Meanwhile, Lisa was already planning her next strike. She had learned about a terraforming station on Europa 7 that was converting the planet's atmosphere to make it suitable for Zephyrian colonization. The process was delicate and required constant monitoring. Any disruption could set back the project by years. The terraforming station used massive atmospheric processors to convert the planet's carbon dioxide into oxygen. The processors were controlled by a central computer that monitored atmospheric conditions and adjusted the conversion rate accordingly. Lisa realized that if she could corrupt the monitoring data, she could cause the processors to work against each other. Getting to Europa 7 required a more complex approach. The planet was heavily monitored, and unauthorized ships were not allowed to approach. Lisa solved this problem by arranging for Peter Walsh to bid on a contract to supply the terraforming station with spare parts. When his bid was accepted, she joined the delivery crew as a technical specialist. The terraforming station was built on the planet's surface, surrounded by the massive atmospheric processors that worked day and night to change the air. The facility was largely automated, with only a small crew of Zephyrian technicians to oversee the operation. Lisa's job was to help install new monitoring equipment in the atmospheric processors. This gave her direct access to the systems that controlled the terraforming process. She worked carefully, taking 3 days to complete modifications that should have taken only 1 day. The modifications were subtle but devastating. Lisa reprogrammed the monitoring sensors to report false data to the central computer. The sensors would indicate that the atmosphere was changing too slowly, causing the computer to increase the processor's output. But the increased output would actually push the atmospheric composition in the wrong direction. The sabotage was designed to work slowly over several months. The Zephyrians would not notice the problem until the terraforming process had been severely damaged. By then it would take years to fix the atmospheric imbalance and restart the project. Lisa left Europa 7 with the delivery crew, acting as if nothing had happened. But she knew that in a few months, the Zephyrians would discover that their terraforming operation had been turned into a weapon against itself. Word of the atmospheric problems reached Admiral Kethmer. 4 months later, the terraforming station reported that Europa 7's atmosphere was becoming more toxic instead of more breathable. The processors had been working perfectly, but somehow their efforts were making the planet less suitable for colonization. This time, the Admiral was certain that sabotage was involved. 4 major failures in one sector could not be explained by coincidence or equipment wear. Someone was deliberately targeting Zephyrian operations, using methods that left no obvious traces. The Admiral increased security at all facilities in his sector and ordered detailed inspections of critical systems. He also sent reports to his superiors, warning them that the Empire was facing a new kind of enemy, one that struck from the shadows and left no fingerprints. But Lisa Harper was already 3 steps ahead. She had identified her next target and was preparing for an attack that would shake the Zephyrian Empire to its foundations. The war was escalating, and she was just getting started. Admiral Kethmer stood in his command center on the flagship Eternal Glory, staring at reports that made no sense. In 8 months, his sector had suffered 12 major system failures. Mining operations had collapsed, supply lines were in chaos, communication networks failed regularly, and now his terraforming projects were destroying themselves. His superiors on the Zephyrian homeworld were demanding answers. The High Command could not understand how a single sector could experience so many problems. Other admirals whispered that Kethmer was incompetent, unable to maintain basic operations in a peaceful region of space. But Kethmer knew better. Someone was hunting his forces with surgical precision, striking at exactly the right targets to cause maximum damage. The attacks showed intimate knowledge of Zephyrian technology and operations. Whoever was responsible had access to their facilities and understood their weaknesses better than most Zephyrians did. The problem was proving it. Every investigation found only equipment failures and computer errors. His best technicians could find no evidence of sabotage. The attacks left no fingerprints, no witnesses, no trace of enemy action. It was as if their facilities were destroying themselves. Commander Zekska entered the command center carrying another report. "Sir, we have received an ultimatum from the High Command. If we cannot stop these failures within 1 month, you will be relieved of command in the entire sector. Will be transferred to Admiral Vorthak." Kethmer felt his career slipping away. Admiral Vorthak was his greatest rival, a younger officer who had never suffered a major setback. If Vorthak took control of the sector, he would claim credit for stopping the mysterious failures, even if they stopped on their own. "There must be something we can do," Kethmer said. "Some way to draw out our enemy." Zekska hesitated before responding. "There is one option, sir. We could make a public threat against human civilians. If someone is conducting these attacks, to protect human interests, such a threat might force them into the open." Kethmer considered this carefully. The Zephyrian Empire had used such tactics before, threatening innocent populations to force enemy governments to surrender. It was an effective strategy that had ended several conflicts without major battles. "Which target would you recommend?" Kethmer asked. "New Montana, sir. It is an agricultural colony with 50,000 human settlers. Large enough to be significant, but small enough that we can easily destroy it if necessary. We could announce that the colony will be eliminated unless the saboteur surrenders within 7 days." The Admiral nodded slowly. It was a desperate move, but he was running out of options. "Prepare the announcement. Make it clear that we will destroy the entire colony if our demands are not met." The ultimatum was broadcast across human space 3 days later. Admiral Kethmer appeared on communication screens throughout the sector. His image transmitted to every human colony and space station. He spoke in perfect English, his voice cold and threatening. "Citizens of the human colonies, for the past 8 months, Zephyrian facilities in this sector have suffered systematic sabotage. Someone with detailed knowledge of our operations has been conducting terrorist attacks against our infrastructure. These attacks end now. We know that a human is responsible for these crimes. We demand that this individual surrender immediately. If they do not present themselves at Zephyrian Command within 7 days, we will destroy the human colony of New Montana as an example of what happens to those who attack the Empire. 50,000 innocent lives hang in the balance. The choice belongs to the terrorist who has been hiding in the shadows. Surrender yourself or watch thousands die for your crimes." The message spread throughout human space within hours. On Earth, General William Knox received an emergency briefing about the ultimatum. He immediately contacted the other military leaders to discuss their response. "We have to consider the possibility that someone is actually conducting these attacks," Knox told his staff. The Zephyrians would not make such a specific threat unless they believed it was true. His intelligence chief, Colonel Patricia Newman, had been studying the pattern of Zephyrian failures. "Sir, I think they are right. The attacks are too precise and too well-timed to be coincidences. Someone with extensive knowledge of their systems has been systematically targeting their weaknesses. But who could be doing this?" Knox asked. "We have no military operations in that sector. Our intelligence services are not conducting any missions against the Zephyrians." Newman looked uncomfortable. "Sir, there is one possibility. Lisa Harper resigned from the service 9 months ago, shortly after the massacre at Colony 7. She was an intelligence officer with extensive knowledge of alien technology. Her brother and his family were killed in that attack." Knox remembered Lisa well. She had been one of his best officers, skilled in both analysis and field operations. Anyone could conduct such a campaign. It would be someone with her training and motivation. "Even if Harper is responsible, we cannot locate her to stop the attacks," Knox said. "Our only option is to try diplomatic pressure to convince the Zephyrians to cancel their threat." But Knox knew that diplomacy would not work. The Zephyrians had made a public ultimatum, and they could not back down without losing face. New Montana would be destroyed unless someone stopped them. Meanwhile, Lisa Harper was sitting in a small cafe on Station Omega, watching the news reports about the ultimatum. She felt a familiar, cold anger in her chest. The same feeling she had experienced while standing in the ruins of Colony 7. Once again, the Zephyrians were threatening innocent people to achieve their goals. Captain Jake Morrison found her. There an hour later, he'd been working with Lisa for several months, providing transportation for her missions without asking too many questions about her real objectives. But the ultimatum had changed everything. "This is about you, isn't it?" Jake said, sitting down across from her. "You're the one who has been hitting their facilities." Lisa did not deny it. "They killed my family. They killed 3,000 people at Colony 7 and called it a lesson. Now they want to kill 50,000 more to catch me. So what are you going to do? Surrender and let them execute you?" Lisa smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I'm going to save New Montana, and I'm going to make sure the Zephyrians regret ever threatening human civilians." Jake stared at her. "You're talking about taking on an entire Zephyrian fleet by yourself? That's suicide." "Maybe, but I have advantages they don't know about. I've been inside their systems for months, planting programs and backdoors that they haven't discovered. I know their weaknesses better than they do. What do you need from me? Transportation to New Montana? Fast and quiet? Can you get me there without being detected? Jake nodded. My ship can avoid their patrol routes. But what's your plan once we arrive? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the details of what she was about to attempt. It was the most dangerous mission of her campaign, but it was also the most important. The Zephyrians had made this personal by threatening innocent people. She would show them what happened when humans were pushed too far. The Zephyrians expect me to surrender or hide, she said finally. They think humans are weak and will sacrifice anything to avoid a fight. They're about to learn how wrong they are. She stood up and headed toward the docking bay where Jake's ship was moored. Prep your ship for immediate departure. Leave in 1 hour. As they walked through the station's corridors, Jake tried one more time to talk her out of it. Lisa, even if you somehow manage to save New Montana, the Zephyrians will just threaten another colony. You can't protect everyone. No, Lisa agreed. But I can make them afraid to threaten anyone. Fear is the only language bullies understand. It's time to teach the Zephyrian Empire what fear feels like. Jake's ship, the Star Runner, launched from Station Omega 30 minutes later. Its destination was New Montana, where 50,000 human colonists waited to see if they would live or die. They did not know that their fate rested in the hands of one angry woman who had already declared war on an empire. Lisa spent the journey preparing for what might be her final mission. She checked her equipment, reviewed her plans, and thought about Danny and his family. If she died at New Montana, at least she would die fighting for something that mattered. The Zephyrians had taught her that some things were worth more than life itself. The Star Runner dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Montana system. Ahead of them, the Zephyrian fleet waited like vultures, ready to destroy an entire world to catch one human. But they had no idea what was coming for them. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space above New Montana like dark clouds before a storm. Admiral Kethmer commanded 18 warships, enough firepower to turn the planet's surface into molten glass. The colonists below knew they were helpless. Their small defense force had 3 patrol ships that would last maybe 10 seconds against the Zephyrian fleet. Lisa Harper studied the enemy formation from the pilot seat of Jake Morrison's ship, the Star Runner. They had arrived at New Montana 12 hours before the ultimatum deadline, using Jake's knowledge of smuggler routes to avoid detection. The ship was hidden in the shadow of a small moon, invisible to Zephyrian sensors. There has to be another way, Jake said for the 10th time. You can't fight 18 warships by yourself. Lisa continued working on her portable computer, uploading final instructions to programs she had planted throughout the Zephyrian network over the past months. I'm not going to fight them, Jake. I'm going to use their own strength against them. The planet below, the colonists were preparing for the worst. Mayor Linda Stevens had organized the evacuation of children to underground shelters. But everyone knew the shelters would not protect them from orbital bombardment. The colony's small communication station sent desperate messages to Earth, begging for help that would not arrive in time. Dr. Robert Chen, the colony's chief medical officer, worked frantically to prepare emergency medical supplies. His hospital was built to handle farming accidents and minor injuries, not the aftermath of an alien attack. But he refused to give up hope. Even as Zephyrian ships cast shadows over his world, Admiral Kethmer received his final orders from the High Command as the deadline approached. If the terrorist does not surrender in the next 6 hours, you will destroy the colony completely. Leave no survivors. Make this an example that other humans will remember. The Admiral acknowledged the orders, though he felt no satisfaction in them. Destroying civilian targets was effective, but left a bitter taste in his mouth. He preferred clean military victories to the slaughter of innocents. The orders were orders, and his career depended on following them. Lisa finished her preparations and turned to Jake. I need you to take a message to the surface. Tell Mayor Stevens to evacuate everyone to the northern continent. Tell them to stay underground for at least 24 hours. What about you? I'll be busy. Lisa gathered her equipment and headed toward the Star Runner's small shuttle bay. Give me exactly 4 hours, then send that message I showed you. Jake looked at the message Lisa had written. It was addressed to Admiral Kethmer and contained only a few words. New Montana is under my protection. Come and take it. You're insane, Jake said. You know that, right? Lisa smiled as she climbed into the shuttle. Danny always said I was too stubborn for my own good. Turns out he was right. The shuttle detached from the Star Runner and began its approach to New Montana. Lisa had programmed the autopilot to follow a course that would make the small craft appear to be a supply ship from one of the outer settlements. The Zephyrians were expecting a surrender, not an attack, so their guard was down. Lisa's destination was the colony's main power plant, a fusion reactor that provided electricity for the entire settlement. She had studied the plant's blueprints during the journey from Station Omega and identified exactly what she needed to do. The shuttle landed at the power plant's service dock without incident. Lisa had forged work orders that identified her as a maintenance technician responding to a minor malfunction. The few technicians on duty barely looked at her credentials before waving her through. To the reactor chamber, Lisa worked quickly once she was inside. The fusion reactor was a standard human design built for safety and reliability. But with the right modifications, it could become something much more dangerous. She connected her portable computer to the reactor's control system and began uploading new operating parameters. The reactor would continue to function normally for the next 3 hours. Then, when Lisa triggered the program remotely, it would begin to overload in a very specific way. The overload would not cause an explosion that might harm the colonists. Instead, it would create a massive electromagnetic pulse that would disrupt electronic systems across the entire planet. While the reactor prepared for its new role, Lisa moved to the colony's communication center. The building was largely automated, with only a single operator on duty. Lisa waited until the man left for his break, then slipped inside and connected her computer to the main transmitter. The communication system was more complex than the reactor, but Lisa had prepared for this as well. She uploaded a virus that would take control of the transmitter when activated. The virus would turn the peaceful communication array into a powerful jamming system, broadcasting interference on the frequencies used by Zephyrian military communications. Final stop was the colony's weather control station. New Montana's climate was managed by a network of satellites that could influence wind patterns, precipitation, and temperature. Lisa had studied the system during her approach and identified how it could be weaponized. She uploaded new programming to the weather satellites, instructions that would turn them into kinetic weapons. When activated, the satellites would use their attitude control thrusters to change their orbits, causing them to fall toward specific targets on the planet's surface. The impacts would not be large enough to cause significant damage, but they would be precisely aimed at Zephyrian landing sites. With her preparations complete, Lisa made her way to the colony's emergency shelter system. She had 4 hours to wait, and she intended to spend them protecting the colonists from what was about to happen. Above the planet, Admiral Kethmer received Jake Morrison's message exactly on schedule. The Admiral read the brief challenge with growing anger. After months of hiding in the shadows, his enemy was finally revealing themselves. But instead of surrendering, they were daring him to attack. "Sir, sensors detect no military vessels in the system," reported his tactical officer. "If this terrorist is on the planet, they are alone, and we will teach them the price of defying the Empire," Kethmer replied. "All ships prepare for orbital bombardment. Target the main population centers first." But as the Zephyrian fleet moved into attack position, Lisa triggered her programs. The fusion reactor began its controlled overload, building toward the massive electromagnetic pulse that would cripple every piece of electronic equipment on the planet. The communication array started broadcasting interference that jammed Zephyrian military frequencies. The weather satellites adjusted their orbits and began falling toward predetermined targets. The first sign of trouble came when the Zephyrian ships lost communication with each other. Admiral Kethmer tried to contact his fleet commanders, but received only static in response. Then the electromagnetic pulse erupted from the planet's surface, a wave of energy that washed over the Zephyrian fleet like an invisible tsunami. 18 warships suddenly found themselves blind and deaf. Their sensors failed, their computers crashed, and their weapon systems went offline. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the fleet as backup systems struggled to compensate for the massive electronic failure. Admiral Kethmer watched in horror as his mighty fleet became helpless. Without their computers, the ships could not coordinate their movements or target their weapons. Some vessels began to drift out of formation as their navigation systems failed. Then the weather satellites began to impact. Lisa had programmed them to target the few Zephyrian shuttles that had landed on the planet's surface, destroying the ground teams that were supposed to confirm the colony's destruction. The impacts were small, but precise, eliminating the Admiral's ability to verify his mission as the Zephyrian fleet struggled to restore their systems. A new problem emerged. The electromagnetic pulse had not only disabled their electronics, but also damaged their fusion reactors. Without computer control, the reactors became unstable. One by one, the warships began to suffer containment failures. The first ship to explode was the Eternal Glory, Admiral Kethmer's flagship, the reactor. Breach vaporized the vessel in seconds, taking the Admiral and his entire crew with it. Other ships followed as their reactors went critical, creating a chain reaction of destruction that consumed the entire fleet. From her shelter deep underground, Lisa felt the ground shake as debris from the destroyed fleet rained down on New Montana's surface. She had done what seemed impossible, defeated an entire alien fleet without firing a single shot. The Zephyrian Empire had learned that humans could be far more dangerous than they appeared. News of the fleet's destruction spread throughout the galaxy. Within days, the Zephyrian Empire, shocked by their devastating loss, withdrew from human space entirely. Other alien civilizations, long oppressed by Zephyrian dominance, began to whisper of rebellion. Lisa Harper disappeared after the battle, becoming a legend told in 100 different languages across 1,000 worlds. Some said she had died in the destruction. Others claimed she was still out there, watching and waiting for the next threat to humanity. On Earth, General Knox received a single message from an untraceable source. Colony 7 has been avenged. The galaxy is bigger than one empire, and humanity deserves better than to live in fear. The real war is just beginning.